On January 23, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order that will fundamentally transform how America handles money. Not just cryptocurrency, not just digital assets, the entire foundation of the American financial system. And what happened next changed everything. Within hours of signing, Bitcoin jumped 12%, Ethereum surged 15%, Solana exploded 28% in a single day. But those price movements were just the beginning. Because what Trump actually signed wasn't just another crypto-friendly policy. It was the blueprint for replacing the dollar as we know it with something completely different. The Digital Dollar Act represents the most radical monetary experiment in American history. More significant than leaving the gold standard in 1971, more transformative than the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. And here's what nobody's telling you. This isn't about making crypto mainstream. This is about making the government's debt problem disappear while fundamentally restructuring who controls America's money. 3 months later, Trump signed another executive order establishing the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. By July, Congress passed the Genius Act, creating federal regulation for stablecoins. And right now, as I'm recording this, the pieces are falling into place for the most sophisticated monetary reset in human history. Let me show you exactly what's happening. Not the headlines, not the political theater, the actual mechanisms being put in place that will determine whether you preserve wealth through this transition or lose everything you've saved. Because this isn't theory anymore. The policies are signed, the legislation is passed, the timeline is accelerating, and understanding what comes next isn't just about investment strategy. It's about survival. Trump's digital dollar strategy operates on 3 fundamental pillars. First, ban central bank digital currencies completely. Second, promote private dollar-backed stablecoins as the replacement. Third, accumulate strategic reserves in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Each pillar serves a specific purpose in the larger plan. The CBDC ban isn't what most people think. Everyone focuses on privacy concerns, government surveillance, the threat to individual liberty. Those are real issues, but they're not the primary reason Trump banned central bank digital currencies. The real reason is control. Who gets to issue America's digital money determines who controls America's monetary system. Under a CBDC system, the Federal Reserve would issue digital dollars directly. Every transaction would flow through government systems. Every digital dollar would be a liability of the central bank. The government would have complete visibility into all economic activity, complete control over who can spend money and how. But here's the key. Under that system, the government also bears all the risk. When people hold digital dollars issued by the Fed, those are government liabilities. If the system fails, if there's a run on digital dollars, if confidence collapses, the government has to make everyone whole. Trump's approach eliminates that risk by shifting it to private companies. Instead of the government issuing digital dollars, private stablecoin companies do it. Circle issues USDC. Tether issues USDT. These are private liabilities, not government liabilities. When you hold a stablecoin, you're not holding a government IOU. You're holding a corporate IOU backed by government securities. This creates a brilliant structure. The government gets all the benefits of digital currency adoption without bearing the risks. Private companies handle customer service, technology infrastructure, regulatory compliance, and liability management. The government just provides the underlying backing through Treasury securities and maintains oversight through regulation. The Genius Act, signed into law in July 2025, makes this structure official. It requires stablecoin issuers to back their tokens 100% with liquid assets, US dollars or short-term Treasury securities. It mandates monthly public disclosure of reserve composition. It establishes strict marketing rules and consumer protections. And critically, it prioritizes stablecoin holders' claims over all other creditors if an issuer fails. What this means in practice is that stablecoins become safer than bank deposits. Your money in a checking account is protected up to $250,000 by FDIC insurance. Your money in regulated stablecoins is backed dollar for dollar by the safest assets in the world, US Treasury securities, the full faith and credit of the United States government, but without the government bearing direct liability for the digital currency itself. The economics are extraordinary. Tether, the largest stablecoin issuer, already holds over $100 billion in US Treasury securities. Circle holds tens of billions more. As stablecoin adoption accelerates, these companies will need to buy hundreds of billions, potentially trillions, in additional Treasury securities to back the new tokens they issue. This creates massive artificial demand for US government debt, not from foreign central banks that might sell during geopolitical tensions, not from domestic institutions that might diversify into other assets. from private companies that are legally required to hold treasuries as backing for their stablecoins. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent explained this perfectly in March 2025. Stablecoins don't threaten dollar dominance. They reinforce it by creating new demand for US Treasury securities. Almost 99% of stablecoins are dollar denominated. Every dollar of stablecoin issuance requires $1 of Treasury purchases. White House AI and crypto czar David Sachs took this further. He stated that stablecoins have the potential to create potentially trillions of dollars of demand for US Treasury securities while ensuring American dollar dominance internationally and increasing usage of the US dollar digitally as the world's reserve currency. Think about the mathematics. The current stablecoin market is approximately $245 billion. If that grows to just $2 trillion over the next 5 years, that's $2 trillion in additional treasury purchases, forced purchases by private companies that have no choice but to buy treasuries to back their stablecoins. This demand is different from traditional treasury buyers. Foreign central banks can decide to diversify out of dollars. Pension funds can shift to other assets, but stablecoin companies can't. The law requires them to hold treasuries. As long as people want to use stablecoins, these companies must keep buying government debt. Now let's examine the international dimension. As much as 80% of dollar-backed stablecoin activity happens outside the United States. Countries like Argentina, Brazil, and Nigeria are seeing massive stablecoin adoption for remittances and as hedges against local currency instability. This is digital dollarization happening organically. People in countries with weak currencies are choosing to hold digital dollars instead of their local money. But they're not holding actual dollars. They're holding stablecoins backed by treasuries, which means every person in Argentina who switches from pesos to USDC is indirectly buying US government debt. The network effects are accelerating. More stablecoin adoption means more treasury purchases. More treasury purchases means stronger demand for US debt. Stronger demand means lower interest rates for the US government. Lower interest rates make it cheaper to service existing debt and issue new debt, which makes the entire system self-reinforcing. But this is only pillar one of Trump's strategy. The private stablecoin framework creates artificial treasury demand and extends dollar dominance through digital channels. Pillar two is the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and this is where the debt elimination strategy becomes visible. On March 6, 2025, Trump signed an executive order establishing the strategic Bitcoin reserve and US digital asset stockpile. The initial reserve consists exclusively of Bitcoin owned by the Department of Treasury through criminal and civil asset forfeiture proceedings. Approximately 200,000 Bitcoin, making the United States the largest known state holder of Bitcoin in the world. The government didn't buy this Bitcoin. They seized it from criminal enterprises, Silk Road, ransomware operators, money laundering schemes. What they're doing now is treating it as a strategic reserve asset, similar to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve or gold reserves at Fort Knox. But here's where it gets interesting. The proposed Bitcoin Act goes much further than Trump's executive order. It would allow the Treasury Department to directly purchase up to 1 million Bitcoin, acquiring approximately 5% of Bitcoin's total supply. At current prices, that would be worth roughly $100 billion. The Bitcoin Act mirrors the size and scope of US gold reserves, creating a parallel strategic asset that exists outside traditional monetary policy frameworks. But unlike gold, Bitcoin has a mathematically fixed supply, 21 million coins. That's it. No more can ever be created, and the US government's potential acquisition of 5% of that total supply would fundamentally alter global Bitcoin dynamics. Here's why this matters for debt elimination. When governments hold strategic reserves, they can revalue those reserves to improve their balance sheet position. The United States did this with gold in 1934, increasing the official gold price from $20.67 per ounce to $35 per ounce overnight, a 69% revaluation that instantly improved the government's financial position. The same mechanism works with Bitcoin, but the mathematics are far more explosive. If the US acquires 1 million Bitcoin at an average price of $100,000 per coin, that's a $100 billion investment. But if Bitcoin's price rises to $500,000 due to institutional adoption, sovereign demand, and supply scarcity, those reserves become worth $500 billion. The government creates $400 billion in balance sheet value without printing a single dollar. And unlike gold revaluation in 1934, Bitcoin revaluation happens in global markets with real price discovery. The government doesn't just declare Bitcoin is worth more. Market forces drive the price higher as supply becomes increasingly scarce and demand increases from institutional adoption. The supply dynamics are already visible. Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy holds over 300,000 Bitcoin. El Salvador has been accumulating since 2021. Multiple US corporations have added Bitcoin to their treasury reserves. And now the US government is positioning to become the largest institutional holder in the world. This creates a supply shock unlike anything Bitcoin has experienced. When a significant percentage of Bitcoin's supply moves into strategic reserves held by entities that won't sell, the available supply for trading shrinks dramatically. Basic economics tells us what happens next. Reduced supply plus stable or increasing demand equals higher prices. But the debt elimination strategy goes deeper than simple asset appreciation. It's about creating optionality for monetary policy. Right now, the US government has limited tools for managing debt burdens. They can raise taxes, cut spending, or inflate the currency. All politically difficult options with significant economic consequences. A strategic Bitcoin reserve creates a fourth option: asset revaluation. If Bitcoin reaches the prices that many analysts predict, 500,000, 1 million, or even higher, the US government suddenly has a massive asset that can be used to offset debt obligations without traditional monetary expansion. The mechanism works like this. Government debt is denominated in dollars. Bitcoin reserves appreciate in dollar terms. As Bitcoin rises from $100,000 to $1 million per coin, the government's Bitcoin reserves increase in value by 900%. That appreciation can be used to improve debt-to-asset ratios, provide backing for additional currency issuance, or even directly offset debt obligations through strategic sales. This isn't theoretical. Multiple countries are already implementing variations of this strategy. El Salvador uses Bitcoin reserves to back infrastructure bonds. Russia and China accumulate gold and alternative assets to reduce dollar dependence. The United States is simply applying the same principle with digital assets that have superior supply characteristics to traditional reserves. The timing is crucial. Bitcoin adoption is accelerating across institutional investors, corporations, and now governments. The US has a window to accumulate significant reserves before prices rise beyond practical acquisition levels. Miss this window, and other countries could gain strategic advantages in the digital asset space. China already controls significant Bitcoin mining capacity. Russia has been accumulating cryptocurrency reserves. European nations are developing digital asset frameworks. The race for digital monetary supremacy is happening now, and early movers gain disproportionate advantages. Trump's administration recognized this dynamic. The executive orders and legislation aren't just domestic policy. They're positioning moves in a global competition for digital monetary leadership. The country that controls the most significant digital asset reserves while maintaining the world's primary reserve currency gains enormous leverage over global financial systems. The third pillar of Trump's strategy involves expanding the strategic Bitcoin reserve beyond Bitcoin itself. On March 3, 2025, Trump announced that the reserve would include Solana, Cardano, Ripple's XRP, and Ethereum alongside Bitcoin. This diversification creates exposure to different technological approaches and market segments within digital assets. Each cryptocurrency serves specific strategic purposes. Ethereum provides exposure to smart contract platforms and decentralized finance infrastructure. Solana offers high-speed transaction processing. XRP focuses on cross-border payments and banking integration. Cardano emphasizes academic research and sustainable blockchain development. By holding reserves across multiple digital assets, the US government gains optionality across different technological outcomes. If smart contracts become dominant, Ethereum reserves appreciate. If high-speed transactions prove most valuable, Solana benefits. If cross-border payments drive adoption, XRP gains. The diversified approach hedges technological uncertainty while maximizing potential upside. The announcement immediately impacted cryptocurrency prices. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, and XRP all surged as markets recognized the implications of US government adoption. This price response demonstrates the power of sovereign demand in cryptocurrency markets. Government accumulation doesn't just affect prices through direct purchases. It signals institutional legitimacy that drives broader adoption. But the real innovation lies in how these reserves integrate with the broader monetary system. Traditional strategic reserves like gold or oil are held separately from day-to-day monetary operations. The strategic Bitcoin reserve operates differently. It exists within the same technological infrastructure that supports private stablecoins, decentralized finance protocols, and digital payment systems. This integration creates new possibilities for monetary policy implementation. Instead of relying solely on interest rate adjustments or money supply changes, The government could potentially influence digital asset markets directly through strategic reserve management, buy or sell Bitcoin to influence cryptocurrency prices, stake Ethereum to earn yields while maintaining reserves, participate in decentralized finance protocols to generate additional returns on strategic assets. These capabilities don't exist with traditional reserves. Gold sits in vaults generating no yield. Oil reserves are held for emergency release during supply disruptions. But digital asset reserves can actively participate in their native ecosystems while serving strategic purposes. The Federal Reserve is watching these developments carefully. While they're prohibited from issuing central bank digital currencies under Trump's executive orders, they're not prevented from studying how digital asset reserves might integrate with monetary policy frameworks. The research is ongoing, and the implications are profound. If digital asset reserves become tools for monetary policy implementation, the entire framework of central banking evolves. Interest rates remain important, but they're no longer the primary mechanism for influencing economic conditions. Asset purchases and sales, staking rewards, and protocol participation become additional policy levers. This represents the most fundamental change in monetary policy tools since the creation of modern central banking, and it's happening not through academic research or gradual policy evolution, but through direct implementation of digital asset accumulation strategies by the world's largest economy. The pieces are in motion, the executive orders are signed, the legislation is passed, the strategic Bitcoin reserve is operational. What we're witnessing isn't just policy change, it's the controlled demolition of the old monetary system and the construction of something entirely new. Trump's Digital Dollar Act represents the most sophisticated financial strategy ever attempted by any government. Ban central bank digital currencies to maintain private sector innovation. Promote stablecoins to create artificial treasury demand. Accumulate strategic digital asset reserves to gain leverage over future monetary policy. Each component reinforces the others in a system designed to preserve dollar dominance while adapting to digital reality. The mathematics are undeniable. Trillions in forced treasury purchases through stablecoin backing. Potential hundredfold appreciation in strategic Bitcoin reserves. Enhanced monetary policy tools through digital asset integration. The United States is positioning for digital monetary supremacy, while other nations debate whether to participate. But here's what matters for you. This transition is happening whether you understand it or not, whether you participate or not, whether you prepare or not. The question isn't if America's money will be reshaped. The question is whether you'll recognize what's happening and position accordingly. The window is open. The strategy is visible. The timeline is accelerating. What happens next depends on who moves first.